And I'm back at Nancy's Neighborhood, and it's good to be back with you after those commercials, and I hope you all enjoyed them. And I do need for you to go and support our sponsors. And one thing my producer Bryce just told me from over here on the sidelines is that I need to mention to you that WTNB will be broadcasting the Christmas Parade live. And so you need to, if you're not going to go downtown, be sure you watch it on Channel 5 Charter, Channel 210 Comcast, and 27 on Rabbit Ears. But I love it when Bryce is over there telling me things and like take off my necklace because it was clicking the microphone and things like that. So that's what a producer is supposed to do. But that's enough of that. Now we're here to talk about this wonderful little book called Magi. And I have Daniel Gilbert with me here, and Dr. Daniel Gilbert. And he is the author of this book, and I have read the book. I really did. I thought, I'm not interviewing this man until I have read the book, and it's wonderful.
Well, thank you.
When I first started it out, I thought, okay, this is going to be the story of the fourth wise man. No.
No.
This is the story of the original wise men, and it is, or Magi, and it's just an awesome book.
Thank you.
What I loved combined ancient history, detailed astronomy, prophecy, and legend in this imaginative tale of one of the original Magi and the life-changing meeting with the new Christ King. How did you come up with this?
Well, my interest in this story goes back to my childhood. I think a lot of your viewers have probably seen live nativity scenes. In fact, I think we've been having some in the area. And I was actually a wise man several times in church plays.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd get my cardboard crown and put tinfoil over it and my dad's bathrobe. But my father was a Sunday school teacher. He was a teacher, a history teacher in public school. And he was a storyteller. And he would tell us, I grew up listening to really vivid, imaginative, colorful Bible stories from my father. And he had a flair for being authentic and for giving detail that from secular history that some of the Bible writers left out. And so his story of the wise men was much different than the one I played in the church play, the ones who were showing up on the Christmas cards, and even our little ceramic nativity set had the wise men with the shepherds, with the star. And so I was always interested in how there is a difference, it seems, from history in who the Magi were and what their purpose was with the newborn King versus what our Western traditional Christmas card version is.
Right.
So I wanted to tell an authentic story.
Well, I was raised in a family where we didn't put the wise men with the nativity scene until Epiphany.
Okay.
I mean, you could have them
Yeah.
up there, but they were way over there. You know, they had to get two. But still, Epiphany is just like, what, a week and a
week or
half
so, yeah.
after Christmas. So,
Right.
so what you're thinking is they got across the desert in a week and a half?
Right.
No, they didn't do that. So that was one of the things that I think is just fascinating about this book is the journey of the wise men.
Right. I from my research, I felt that it probably took a couple of years to actually get there. That they didn't show up with the shepherds in Bethlehem. When you look at how Herod inquired of them, and then later, when he had that horrible incident of the massacre of the innocents, it says that he picked children 2 years old and younger. Not that I think they went around checking IDs. They probably killed any young baby,
Yes.
boy and girl, 2 years old and younger, because of the answer the wise men gave him when he said, "What time did the star appear?" So I felt like it was at least a year or two after that. So I don't think I think the story of three kings converging in the Arabian desert and being with the shepherds, it makes a nice Christmas card, and I like nativity scenes and I like live nativities, and I think they're wonderful. But the authenticity of it there's a disconnect there, and so in my novel I set it where it takes a couple of years.
And I noticed that it did take a couple of years, and they actually went to a house
Right.
in Nazareth.
Yes.
And see, I did read it, at a house in Nazareth, and I thought that was interesting because no longer in the stable,
Right.
which is how we picture all this. Now, were there three wise men, do you think? Or what's your take? According to this, we had a group.
We did. Travel in the ancient world wasn't like it is today. You and I can get in a car and drive 80 miles to Knoxville and come back the same day, and we don't think anything about it. In the ancient world, it was dangerous. You traveled in groups. If you read the accounts of, for example, when they went to the temple for Passover, they thought Christ, the boy Christ, was with the family in the group. You didn't travel alone. The story of the Good Samaritan, he was traveling alone to Jericho and he was attacked. Even though Rome was pretty tight with their soldiers and policing everything, it was a dangerous time. So you didn't really travel alone. You didn't have the wanderlust today that we have in Western society. It was dangerous. There's no guarantee you'd get there alive. So they would have, I believe, based upon ancient accounts of caravan travel in that part of the world, which was extremely heavy in caravan travel, going from Egypt to Syria over into Parthia, where I believe the Magi originated from. They would have likely either hired their own caravan with their own armed guards, or they would have joined a large merchant caravan, which is what I have them do in this story. And that would have been the most common approach to long distance travel.
Okay, now let me ask you about the gentleman who spots the star in the sign of Virgo in the sky, and of course it's a new star.
Right.
So he registers it, or whatever you say that we do here. So he's registered his star. And then he convinces everybody that we need to follow the star. This is going to be the one. And I asked you this before we came on live on TV, but the deliverer was in your book is called
the Sociosh.
Sociosh. Now I was telling Dan that when I read this, I call these people names that I could pronounce. So the Sociosh, which means deliverer. In the Pahlavic language, according to my research that I did, I worked about a decade on this book while I was in the middle of a management career. So I couldn't write every day, but in the decade that I worked on it, I was able to uncover in the ancient text socios, meaning savior or deliverer. Okay. So I tried to be authentic in my use of the terminology. So well, that was interesting because that's the first thing I saw, and then of course I commented to you about the fact that the Hebrew pronunciation of Joseph and Jacob, and and that was in here, which that was fine. Those were words I could read. Some of these words I couldn't, but it sounded like, in the book we had a group of gentlemen that's all they did was like stargaze and study the heavens. Right.
It's interesting that that the New Testament opens with what I believe are Gentile astronomers, when other places in the New Testament, the Greek word magis is used in a very negative sense. It's sorcery. But here Matthew opens up using it in a good sense. And the lesson for me was God can use who he wants to do anything he wants to do. And if you look at some Old Testament, not perfect parallels, but you have Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, was called the priest of the Most High God, but he was the high priest of the tribe of Midian, which were enemies of Israel. And so there God used someone, and it said he sacrificed with the elders of Israel. And also Melchizedek was a person who was the priest of Salem, and he came and gave Abraham food. So God can use other kinds of people he did in the Old Testament. And so for me, a Gentile living in this century, God can use me. Right. God can use all of us as he sees fit.
Absolutely. So, and this book is absolutely wonderful, folks, I'm telling you. And it's going to be available. It's available now at the Museum Center gift shop. But you're going to be there Sunday.
I am.
And Vince is going to talk about that in a few minutes. But we're going to continue to talk about this book because this is a question, everybody. Jesus wasn't born on December 25th.
Well, I believe that Jesus was born. I believe that he was born. I believe that he was born in Bethlehem. I believe the Bible says Herod sent them to Bethlehem. I just think they found him because Matthew uses the words. They found a child in a house, whereas Luke says they found a babe in a manger. But I think the New Testament suggests that he was born probably in the warmer weather months. First of all, there was an available manger. If the barn or the cave, the grotto had been full of animals that had been sheltered, probably there wouldn't have been a manger available. And the shepherds were out tending their flock by night, which typically in the ancient world didn't happen. It could have been a mild winter, maybe so, but typically the animals would have been in the cave or in the pen, not out in the field overnight during the colder months. And also the taxing or the census that was taken, that would probably not have occurred during the winter months either, moving big tribes and big groups of families around Palestine during the winter months when travel was dangerous anyway. Probably wouldn't have led to a good census, and then the taxes that would have occurred after that. So those are some clues from the New Testament, I think, that would suggest a warmer month. Now, December 25th was the Roman pagan festival of Saturnalia, and there's some scholars have said they picked December 25th to replace that. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I do believe he was born, and I love celebrating on December 25th. The Emmanuel Fellowship Church here has that Christmas Eve service every year, and we participate in that and celebrate Christmas on the 25th. But I think it's more than likely an April or May birth, probably.
Well, let me ask you this then. The star that, and I started with an R. What was his name? I've already pronounced it to y'all.
I pronounced the main character's name as Ramates.
Ramates,
so, yeah.
the star of the book,
Right.
Ramates, or the hero of the book. But the star that Ramates saw was there in the Virgo constellation. All right, now, do you think that the astronomers at that time actually saw a star?
I think it was a star.
Okay.
The reason being, it's what Matthew says. Matthew was a tax collector for the Romans, and he knew at least 4 languages, so he knew what the Greek word for star was. He in the previous chapter said that a virgin will give birth to a son, and they'll call his name Emmanuel, which is interpreted God with us. So he knew when he needed to interpret a word. He didn't say aster, which means conjunction, aster, which means something else going on. He said aster, which is the Greek word for star. So here I am 2,000 years later writing this book. There's a lot of conjunction theories out there, but I stuck with star. I think Matthew used the word star. He uses it a lot in the book of Matthew, not just in that chapter, and he knew what he was talking about. The best conjunction, you read from the front cover there about astronomy. I purchased software, astronomy software, which anybody can do. It's not anything special, where you can actually plug in the coordinates of anywhere in the world and say, show me the night sky from this coordinate on this date. You can go back as back in time as far as you want or as forward in time. And there were conjunctions, but none of them were close enough from the human eye viewpoint to be a single point of light. I looked at all of them, and I've also read about them as well. And so you'd have to argue, if you're going to believe in a conjunction, that the people knew that meant that a child would be born. In the religion of the Magi, some of their writings, which I discovered, talked about in this what we would call the sign of Virgo. Not that I'm an astrologer or practice astrology, but the astronomy piece of it. And back in ancient times, astronomy and astrology were connected. Today, one's science, one's philosophy. They would have put a big emphasis on that. So I in my research, I found that they put a lot of emphasis on the sign of Virgo as the sign of the Virgin. And so I think that obviously the Jews weren't paying attention. They weren't allowed to practice astronomy, so they may not have noticed a new star. If they did, that wouldn't have meant anything to them because they were forbidden. But to the Magi, they would have paid attention to it.
But mainly because that was part of their job. Was to be watching the heavens.
They charted
and to see,
them. Yeah.
Right, and to see. And I thought it was really interesting because when the star was seen, it was like we've discovered something new.
Right.
So that takes us up the ranks just a little bit.
Right.
This is a wonderful book and a wonderful read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I just like I told you before we went on camera, some of these things I pronounced the names personally the way I phonetically sounded them out, but I was going to see if there was anything. Okay, we talked about who the Magi were. We think there were more than 3, and they didn't find Jesus in Bethlehem.
I don't think they did. Obviously, Herod sent them there. Obviously, that's where Jesus was born. At Christmas time, the 2nd chapter of Luke is read in church, and it's a beautiful passage, and it talks about the shepherds. And a lot of times we stop there when we're reading, when we're in a church service, and we never go past there. And after that is when he's brought for the circumcision, and he's brought for the dedication. Dedication occurred 40 days after birth, okay? And so you have the prophecy of Anna, you have the prophecy of Simeon, then you have the 40 days of purification, and what do they offer? They offer 2 pigeons, the offering of a poor person. If they had had the gold, they wouldn't have made an offer of pigeons. They all of a sudden had wealth. So it's unlikely that the Magi would have been there by the 40 days of the dedication to the temple. And if you read on in chapter 2 of Luke's, in the 39th verse, it says, when they fulfilled everything, they went and lived in a place called Nazareth. So I believe if the Magi showed up 2 years later, they weren't living in Bethlehem.
Right.
They were only there about 40 days. They had gone back to Nazareth. And that's, I believe, where the wise men found them. Did Herod send them there? Yes. Did they expect to find them there? Yes. But I believe they were led to Nazareth, to a house.
And of course, they took gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Yes.
And according to the Magi here, they brought lots of gold.
Yes. Yes.
So I see what you're saying. If they had had this before, they wouldn't have had to do the poor man's
Right.
2 pigeons. They would have been able to do the gold
Right.
that was brought. And of course, you didn't follow up with what happened to the gold, which is fine. That
Well,
may
I
be
did.
book 2.
Actually, I talk about it. I talk about them needing to escape to Egypt,
Right,
because when
and using
Herod
that.
Herod sent out the decree to kill the children, they were warned to get out of
Right,
Egypt.
right.
They were warned by the angel. So I think they used the gold to get to Egypt.
Now, and I've noticed on our journey too, we lost the star a couple of times,
Right.
which I kind of interpreted as you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Just watch this. But the journey in the caravan was interesting too. How they found the oasis, how they would fill up their water. I mean, folks, this is a really, really good read. I'm telling you right now. When I first picked it up, I thought we were going to talk about the 4th wise man,
right.
because that's a little story my mother used to tell to her Sunday school class every year. And then I started reading, and it's wonderful.
It's not the Christmas card version.
It is not the Christmas card. And speaking of Christmas cards, you have one there. So tell us a little bit about it. This is fascinating.
I was able to visit Cairo, Egypt, a few years back, and the Coptic Christians in Cairo have a large recycling operation. That's how they earn their money, and this is all made from recycled trash from the streets of Cairo. And they of course, the Coptic community believes in, they observe what we would call Epiphany here. And so I was actually there during their Epiphany, and so I got to see a cathedral, and they had the wise men on the carvings on the walls, really nice.
Wow.
And so I was able to pick up this treasure while I was there. I do have a new novel that I'm trying to publish probably in the next month or so. And I'll put a little information about that at the book signing. If you buy one of the books and have me autograph it, I'll put a little information in there about my new novel. It's set in modern times, and it's called Escape from Cairo. And it's about a college professor and her husband who are in Cairo looking for work, interviewing for a job opportunity, and while they're there, they're caught up in the middle of the Arab Spring. And so she's a Christian family in Egypt during the Arab Spring. So that should be coming out around the 1st of the year.
Oh, so you already have it ready.
Oh, yeah, it's ready to go.
It's not, so 10 years roughly
Right.
on this one.
Right.
And folks, this would make a wonderful Christmas gift. I'm telling you right now, it's wonderful. I won't say it's an easy read, because it's not an easy read.
The authentic names.
But if you do the authentic names, but it's a wonderful read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And Daniel, thank you so much for
Thank you
being
for
on with
having
me
me.
today. And I hope everybody will go down to the museum Sunday. December 4th, and buy one of these. They're just $10. I mean, what a great Christmas gift, and almost fit in a stocking, depending on what size your
And
stocking
pretty
is.
for your
It is
for
pretty.
your coffee table.
It is a pretty cover. It really, really is, and it's just a wonderful read. And I think you all would be really, really enjoy this, and also enjoy giving it as a gift, and get an autographed copy and give it to somebody, make it a little bit more special. So, Daniel, thank you so much for being on with me. And I'm going to have Vince Hall on in just a few minutes. He's going to tell us about everything else that's going to be happening at the museum that day. So Don't go away. Watch these commercials. Be sure you support our sponsors, and we'll be right back.